Okay, so we are coming to you live right now,
So as we get
and we
started,
are
I just wanna say
we're going to be streaming some stuff going on right now. So take a listen as we go through here.
So we are coming to you
That's what we have
live
going
right
on.
now.
This is
And
running a
we're
little bit
going-
behind, so we already know this. So
streaming
just
some
for
stuff going on
information
right now, so
purposes,
take a
that way we
listen
got
as
that
we
going
go through
right
here.
away. That's what we have going on. This is running a little bit behind, so we already know this. So just for information purposes, that way we got that going right away.
To as many questions and have as much dialogue as we can. So please make sure that you do that. Again, drop questions into the comment box as well. That's a really handy way for us to answer stuff. And then we're getting ready to go around. We'll start here in just a moment. Make sure that you do that. Again, drop questions into.
Well, hello, Sam. I'm finally here. Sorry about the huge delay there. Sorry about the cluster, of course.
We'll start here in just a moment. We have the one and the only Jay Allen. Jay Allen
Well,
has
hello,
finally made it
Sam.
on this. There
I'm
was some of our
finally
technical
here. Sorry about
difficulties. We
the
were taking a
huge
few
delay
moments
there.
before
Sorry
we
about
got
the
started
cluster,
here
of
to
course.
try to get everything lined up so we could stream this as well. We have the one and the only Jay
Yeah,
Allen.
sorry
Jay
about that
Allen
once
has
again.
finally made it on this. There was some of our technical difficulties. We were taking a few moments before we got started. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with some opening introductions. I am Sam Goodman. A lot of you know me as
Sorry about that once again.
the Hop Nerd. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to just kind of kick things off here. Again, this is making safety entertaining. We're going to have a discussion around that. As I mentioned, as we were just getting started, this is an open Q&A session. So please feel free to jump in and ask questions, drop questions into the comment box. You can direct questions just openly to the panel or to everyone. You can do that as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. That's a little bit about me. Let's jump over to our panelists. We're joined by Jason Lucas, James McPherson, Abby Ferry, and Jay Allen. As you just heard Jay jump on there. You can go ahead and get started with introductions. Jason, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jason Lucas. I'm part of the Safety Justice League. I do content creation, a social media safety minute. I'm also kind of known as the soul doctor, and I am a super fun guy, according to Sam Goodman. And so, yeah, no, I just try to make safety as entertaining as I can, try to make sure that it's an understandable profession. So I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited to answer questions.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, that's a fun story about how we come up with that super fun guy thing. That was hashtag super fun guy, Jason Lucas. Move on to James. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, James?
Hi everyone, my name is James McPherson. I'm the novel British voice that we have on the panel. So I run a podcast called Rebranding Safety, which essentially, from when I interviewed Sam, it's pretty much the English version of the Hop Nerd, because we're extremely similar in how we look at things and apparently how we dress as well. And I think even our family backgrounds are extremely similar, which is really scary. But yeah, my aim is to rebrand health and safety. I don't mean that no one else is doing that, but we just looked at the industry in the UK, and I thought I don't really feel like I fit in this, and thought let's start a podcast, and that's it really.
Hey, thanks, James. Yeah, it's as we started to get to know each other a little bit better, we discovered some eerie similarities. That's for sure. We'll move on to Abby Ferry.
James, there's a place for you. You're with us. Hey, I'm Abby Ferry. I am also with the Safety Justice League. I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and so I guess I'm the Midwest accent of the panel. Happy to be here and talk about fun things I like to do with safety.
Great, thank you, Abby. We'll move on to Jay Allen.
Well, here's the fun part. You're not going to see a picture of me, so I'll be the voice behind everything. That's kind of the way it normally goes. So you can wave for me, by the way, digging the Misfit shirt. By the way, my name is Jay Allen. I guess I'm an industrial and organizational psychologist is mostly what I'm known for. And I do host some shows on Safety FM and have some different broadcasters on the station as well. And would love to hear some of the questions that are out there today on how we can make safety entertaining.
Great. Thanks, Jay. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So what we'll go ahead and do, we'll open up for questions. We'll open up for questions again to the chat box. For those folks that just want to jump in and ask questions, just feel free, unmute, jump in. Please just remember to mute yourself, and then we'll just start having an open conversation with our panelists here about how we believe that we can make safety entertaining, and we'll weave those questions in between some of that discussion. Let me ask this to the group, because I think it was interesting that James brought it up. what started a lot of you guys down this path of trying to do safety a little maybe differently than the rest of the herd, right? Because I think most of us probably fall into that category that we wanted to do things a little bit differently. What started you down that path?
I'll go. For me, working with construction populations, I knew that I had to do things differently because of just the time. Often I was given 10 minutes to do literally anything. So you have an 8-hour training. Good, let's make it a tailgate meeting. You need a 4-hour refresher? Awesome, make it a tailgate meeting. And so out of necessity, I've had to make things entertaining. Also because I'm often not the voice or the person, the type of person that the workers were used to seeing up in front of them and giving them safety messages. So I guess in that sense, I was already giving them something different, and often have been brought in just for having a different voice, just bringing in a woman instead of having a guy in front of the workers. So I like to bring in a activity aspect to my training and to my messaging. Safety. So maybe people want to talk about that a little bit too, on different activities that they bring into training or just into messaging for safety.
As for me, I'm going to follow up. That's great stuff, Abby. For me, I was listening to a lot of safety people share safety messaging, and those of you that are on here right now live, and those that are probably listening, will recognize this look. Yeah, that was me falling asleep because I just could not stay awake in some of their messaging. So I figured out that you had to be a lot more entertaining. You had to find a way to simplify the message so it was understood, and start, I mean, just give the training in the way that you talk. Like, make it entertaining, make it fun, and just make it understandable. So that was my road to making it different.
I think for me, kind of, I alluded to it a minute ago, but you know, when I kind of was, I don't know, about 7 years into my career, I was looking around and thinking, oh, this doesn't fit me. Like this, the of health and safety, it was not me. And I was just like, and I play rugby as well, so you can imagine being a health and safety professional at a rugby club. That's for the Americans on the call, that's basically the better version of American football, where we don't wear protection and stuff because we're hard. But basically,
wow.
you can imagine being at a rugby club and getting we call it banter. You know, like you can't tackle him because you did your risk test that? Is that why you did tackle him and all that rubbish? So and long story short, I just surrounded by those kind of banter mates, and you know, all my friends are sole traders and small business owners and stuff, so they just didn't get it. And then over beers and all this stuff, and just chatting away, and I was saying that's not what health and safety is, what you're thinking of what it is, that's not what it is. And they were like, oh, actually, yeah. A couple of years on, convinced me that's right. And a friend of mine said, you should try and tell other people to do that. I was going to start a blog, realized I can't spell. And then somebody told me about podcasts, and boom, there we go.
It sounds like we started podcasts for similar.
You know that you just legitimately
Sam, you could just say what he said.
Right.
You know that you just legitimately said on record that you don't know how to spell. So we're going to hold you to this later down the road, right?
That's fine. It's not a spelling bee, is it? Like,
well,
I
thought that was part of the thing. I was only going to do it in Spanish, definitely not in English.
James has left the call.
I gotta say, it's a lot of the reasons for me is very similar, though. A lot of the stuff that everyone was kind of touching on. I mean, for me, I kind of looked at the profession. I started in the profession at a significantly younger age than most. And when I started, I was like, okay, this is dry. Why's it got to be so boring? Right? That's the question I asked all the time, and it always got me in trouble. It's like, because it has to be. Right? That's usually the answer that we had gotten, right? Is that because I don't know, that's the way we've always done it. And most of you that tune in and hang out with me, you probably understand that I don't care for that answer that much, that I might push back and challenge a little bit. And I did, right? I think that was something that why it had to be different when we come to work, right? The stuff that works outside of work works at work too, right? The same aspects that we use in social media, all those different things that we use in our personal life, all those ways that we communicate outside of work, those things work at work as well. For some reason, we stopped and would say, oh, no, it works different. We can't do that stuff here. It has to be corporate. It has to be dry. It has to be like we're getting a letter from the bank. We can't do things, like normal human beings at work. So when I looked in and seen all that stuff, I was like, that's just unacceptable, right? So that's really what pushed me down that path. That and not seeing myself in our profession, right? I don't mean to kind of pick on anyone, but I didn't see the young safety professional represented very well, much less the young safety professional that liked punk rock and had tattoos, right? I didn't see that person represented in the profession very much, right?
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
Not as many tattoos, but right there with you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So when you look into that, you're going, okay, well, I know that I exist out there, right? I know it's not just me to that point, right? I know it's not just me. I know there are others. So, but yeah, I think that it was really important to kind of go down that path of, or for me, it was important to start to bring in those lessons or bring in those ideas that we use outside of work to better communicate, to better spread messages, right? I share that all the time. When it comes to implementation of stuff, right? That's something we talk a lot about in safety. We pretend like it's different, but it's not. Everything in change management is one big PR campaign. Everything in change management is one big PR campaign, and we forget that lesson when we come to work. So that's kind of my long rambly rant as to how I kind of found myself there. I'm really interested in hearing from Dr. Jay Allen, as I get in trouble for coining him this, but the king of all safety media. I would like to I'd like to hear from Dr. Jay Allen, see how he did this thing.
Oh God, you have to stop calling me that. You're going to get me in trouble. No, I'll have to tell you, and I know my camera view is going to be a little bit different than most, so I do apologize because we're kind of flipping back and forth. Really what it boiled down to, it was a kind of a hot mess type of thing. I kept on looking around inside of the industry, and I was trying to look for something that I deemed quote unquote entertaining and something that I wanted to listen to. So I kept on looking and going, okay, this is not the version of safety that I'm looking for. Now, keep in mind that prior to getting to that particular standpoint, I had a pretty catastrophic event that had occurred at one of the work sites that I was at. So I kept on looking at it and going, okay, I can go to these different organizations and get their content, and some of it's very inspiring, but I'm looking more along the lines of what can we do for it to be able to change and how we can actually affect people in real conversation modes. Not the format that, some people thought that a child should be taught, but how do you do it as adult learning? How do you do it in the format where it's adult learning and entertaining? So it's like entertainment and education. So I kept on looking at it from that standpoint and said, we have to do first, before we get out there, something serious for people to really kind of respond to, okay, here's the seriousness of everything, and then move forward into more of the entertainment side of it, but still being it more along the lines of what I thought I would want to listen to that maybe some others would want to look at too. Now, I was not as open as Sam starting off. I did not show my tattoos to the world. I kind of always looked at it and went, what are people going to think? And I was the long sleeve guy and all that kind of fun stuff. And then I just got to the point where it said, well, it's all a little bit of me. So I think people should see a little bit of my personality of not always being, the quote unquote PC type person.
I think that's a super interesting comment too. Lie to you. I mean, you can see if you've seen me, right? And there's a lot more that you can't say. But for the longest time, to Jay's point, I didn't want to get stuck in long sleeve shirts. My tattoos purposely ended right here. You can see kind of the letter, and they stopped right there because my starchy polo shirts would cover up to that point when I would go out and work, right? So interesting. I think it's really interesting to hear how we all kind of found ourselves, because there was, as we kind of went down this path, I thought it was this group of folks. When I close my eyes and think about the people that I think about that make safety entertaining, this group is a cross section of those people, right? And so I think it's really cool to get to have all these different perspectives together. So we'll jump over to the comment section and dive into a little bit of the questions. This one was sent. How do you go about making it fun with a language barrier? Anybody have any input on that?
Pictures.
Lots of fun pictures.
Yeah.
Like,
How-to videos.
Lego. I've used Lego quite a lot, and I think it's much bigger in America than it is in the UK. But it's called Lego Serious Play. I don't really do it as serious as that because it costs you about $4,000, I think, to become an official facilitator or something like that. It's crazy expensive, and yeah, I wouldn't have bought it if it was 40 quid, if I'm honest. But it's I sometimes you get like a little bag of bricks, and I use this to make the decision around perception of doing a risk assessment and different people's perceptions of risk and things like that. And it's basically like a little yellow duck. So everyone gets the same amount of bricks, a couple of yellow ones, a couple of red ones, and we give them out around the room and say, right, build a duck. Now, a duck is pretty universal. They look the same everywhere. None of them are yellow and red and square. So, Lego doesn't help us there. But that aside, it's interesting because you'll get a room and nobody will build the same duck. I think I've been doing this exercise for years. Twice had two people build the same duck in a room, but it then leads you to down a really interesting conversation. People do things differently. There's another exercise where you can just give people a bucket of mixed bricks and just say, build your job or something like that. And they build their job, and you get a real interesting insight as they explain what they've built as to how they perceive their job. And sometimes I think when you're trying to mix maybe different industries, or maybe even within that business, the different roles, say like maintenance and machine operators or something like that, how they kind of build their job is fascinating. So Lego is one of my favorite things to do.
That's awesome. I wrote that one down. I've never incorporated Lego into training, but I think that's super cool.
Do it.
Yeah.
I've got like 2 massive boxes of Lego in my house, and I haven't even got a kid yet. It's on the way. I can't wait to have a kid, just an excuse to buy more Lego.
I thought you were going to say Jenga, because Jenga seems to be the popular thing around.
I've got a Jenga sitting on my shelf behind me. So Jenga, it does work well like that. There's just so much conversation you can have around Jenga, right? There's so many different ways you can take Jenga, especially as you go down HOP and HPI training. Right. There's just so many different talking perspectives, right? Looking down upon the bricks rather than from the side, right? You can see all the holes. Looking down, you don't see all that. The management just sees this nice, perfect square. There's all kinds of different ways you can take Jenga. The one that I've been playing with quite a bit is Mr. Potato Head, right? In and around kind of when just a blast, right? Anytime that you're assembling anything, right? So we'll do the stuff where we kind of couple a bunch of things together to show how easy it is to create errors, right? Somebody blindfolded with like these nice big kind of like googly eyed spray painted over safety glasses and big gloves, and load them up in PPE and give them this crazy wonky procedure, and then have folks instruct them on how to put together potato heads. It's a blast. I can share this with anyone offline if you'd like. I've got some of this stuff written up. I can send it to some folks in the group if you reach out to me. But yeah, I love those.
At that as well. Buckaroo, do you know that game? Like, I'm thinking around. I've never done this, but I'm thinking around like capacity and things like that. Like you're I don't know, I'm thinking out loud here. So like you put stuff on the Buckaroo, don't you? And then all of a sudden it kicks it all off. So like if you were to try to have a conversation around how much you pushing people to their capacity or pushing machines to their capacity, I don't know, I think Buckaroo might be a good one there. Hey, I'm learning, man. I'm going to get all the games out.
So the best thing that I can take from this is that we use children's games to explain how they don't really all look the same. Go. I'm ready. Let's go. I got lots of. I got 4 kids. I got 4 kids. I got plenty of games that I can figure out to make this work. I mean, I was just going to talk about a toilet paper roll and grabbing. I'm going to leave that one alone.
Okay, Jason, can we come up with a game with Hungry Hippo? Is there something that we could tie in using that? That's one of my favorite games.
Hungry. Of course you. Look, it's all about near misses, Jay Allen. Okay, so every ball that the hippo eats is representative of a near miss. So the more that you are able to capture, the more that you're able to feed that hippo of safe work.
Look at that right there on the spot. You're able to come up to it in real time. I love it.
That was
but then I'm scared of being called the safety hippo lady. So
Good call. Didn't think about it that way.
I already get. Here comes that crazy Sam guy with his Mr. Potato Heads, his trunk full of Mr. Potato Heads.
What's that game
No, that's
with the
interesting. I think,
monkeys as well? What's that game with where you put all the monkeys in the top and you pull the bits out? I reckon you could use that to describe the Swiss cheese model if you wanted to go down that route. Like the more stuff you're taking away, and then there's more holes, and then everything collapses. I'm not as good as Jason, but I'm just thinking out loud here.
I was going to say, what game is
awe of
this?
Jason.
What game is this? I'm not sure. I need to know what game that is.
Is it Barrel of Monkeys?
I think
it is. Yeah.
Is it Barrel?
Yeah, I
You
think
pull
so.
all the monkeys in the top, and then you just
Pick up the
pull the
sticks.
sticks out, and then it's like I don't really understand the game.
Well, that almost sounds like that marble,
years ago.
the marble game that existed. There was like a marble game that you could put stuff in. That one I'm familiar with, but I haven't heard of the one with the monkeys. That's pretty interesting.
Pedro
I
said
don't
it's
think
monkeys in
people
a
have
barrel.
played with
Monkeys in a
marbles.
barrel.
Oh, monkeys in a barrel. All right. And I think we've
And
moved
that's-
on from marbles since like the
Yeah.
50s or something.
I think that's one interesting place to get back to that question a little bit was, my first few years in Arizona. I came to Arizona about 10 years ago, and when I first came to Arizona, I was in northern Arizona, and a significant portion of the Navajo Nation exists in Arizona, and a lot of the sites that I spent my first few years in Arizona at were on Navajo reservation. They were on Navajo land. And obviously I had Navajo higher preference, at 80-90% of the locations were Navajo, and I don't speak Navajo. Right. So back to that language barrier. I'm going to take this, I'm going to take it a little bit farther than even the activities. For me, what really helped me bridge that gap of communication was trust. That was the huge place that helped me bridge that gap, because I would walk into a room and people would go from speaking English to speaking Navajo as soon as I would walk into the room. Right. And I get that. I totally understand that there was no trust there. Right. And once they started, in that exercise of building environments in which we could create honesty, environments in which trust was at least present, or at least started to be present, folks would actually start to continue to communicate with me. I would actually had kind of impromptu translators that would spring up out of the groups, right, and help facilitate those conversations. So all the stuff we're talking about with activities is phenomenal. I mean, I think that's a great way to engage folks and demonstrate points that kind of move us beyond the language barrier. But so much of that is still predicated on trust and the
I
ability
think
to
that's
be open and honest.
interesting, and that kind of goes in line with what you said earlier, Sam, about kind of covering up your tattoos and stuff like that. Like you're trying to create a perception of yourself which is not yourself. So you're not authentic. It's not you that they're starting to build a relationship with. And I think if they don't like you, or they have maybe a perception of you which doesn't fit you, before you're even there, they've turned off. And that's really interesting. They go to their native language before you're even in the room. That's fascinating. So that perception was so impactful to them. The second you walked in the room, they were like, don't want to talk to Sam. Whereas, if they'd have probably given you an opportunity to learn who you are as opposed to your profession, I think that would have made a massive difference.
Right, exactly. And you can imagine, I could only imagine the horrors that workforce had been to get to the point to where that right. You can only imagine how bad it must have been. Right. And so there was a lot of not to dive too deep down that story, but there was a lot of work that had to be done there. And as I said, the benefit to that was that trust was, or at least the ability, I won't say trust, I'll say at least the ability to be honest was now there. Folks were at least trusting enough to where folks would just step up and just start translating. Right. I mean, it was interesting. It was a pretty interesting thing. I wanted to dive into the questions here a little bit. Lego is more painful to step on than hot coals and broken glass. I think that's an interesting conversation. I have a 5-year-old. I know that feeling very well. Barbies aren't much better. I'll say that. let's just say that right now.
Sam, just on the one we were just discussing. Sorry, I just thought of a really interesting story that we did some training with the local fire service in the UK, which unfortunately and ironically has been shut down since we of health and safety, ironically, but it was around fire safety, and essentially we partnered up with a fire service, and they had their training facilities which were designed to send trainee firefighters into this building. They set it on fire and you rescue people. Now, we were doing a lot of work with people that manage properties, and we were trying to get the message over to them as why they need to manage communal spaces and their fire doors and the impact of stuff. So we said, is there any way that we can actually make a live event, like a real fire, and show them why it's so important to manage these means of escapes, to manage fire doors and compartmentation? And they were like, yeah, we can. So we built a fire service perspective day where you went there, you put the BA on, like the whole lot. You had your hard hats on, you had the overalls. You became a firefighter for the day, and we got a massive increase in proactive management of fire, because they've been told about these messages for years and years and years, but now they felt it. They literally felt the heat in their face. They literally saw the smoke traveling through the doors. So sometimes I think if we can be as physical and as real as possible, then that'd be amazing. I think Universal Studios are amazing. Universal Studios I think they've got Tokyo Universal. I might be wrong. It's one of the Asian countries, and they've got, or they used to have. Remember the film Backdraft? That they've got a backdraft ride, or they used to have a backdraft ride. They probably got rid of it now. But wouldn't that be amazing to have people to train, to teach them what backdraft is, to go on a ride like that? Now, obviously that's big budget, but it puts into perspective that sometimes you're learning, you don't even realize you're learning.
Right. It's not as hands-on or physical, but one thing that I'm seeing quite a bit of, I'm actually deep into right now myself, with my day job. Is we're actually rolling out VR training throughout, and we've been doing that for the past several years. We're just at the point to where we're taking organization wide. We've done it in some of our nuclear plants at the moment, and so VR training is becoming very, very cool. The cool part that we're at right now is that trying to take that beyond just general hazard recognition training, because I'm sorry, when I hear hazard recognition training, I kind of go that, right? It's kind of dated, it's kind of old, it doesn't work very well, right? Pointing at hazard and say watch out for hazards doesn't really stop people from falling into hazards, but that's a whole nother story. But we can, we're taking that farther into making training just more immersive, right? We're taking it farther, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes in a headset. If you've ever been in one of these headsets, you'll realize that 10 or 15 minutes is quite a long time, right? So we started down this path of putting people in them for like a half an hour and realized it's probably not good. And then we scaled that way back and really just trying to get into those really, really critical touch points and really trying to focus on those places where it makes sense to do VR training. And it's in those things. What we found is for our folks that go out and do tasks infrequently, especially folks that are, we have a pretty significant office staff that's not used to going out into a power generating facility, right? We have a pretty significant office staff that's not used to walking out on a turbine deck, right? And looking at that equipment or being familiar with that. And you can put them at least in a headset in a safe space, and at least kind of bridge the gap before you just take them out there in the middle of summer on top of an exposed turbine deck in Arizona in 120-degree heat, right? And say, hey, here's what it looks like, So it's pretty cool to kind of, to your point, in that immersive experience, to start seeing that stuff starting to happen. So it's pretty cool to see us starting to go down that path.
So Jay had mentioned adult learning theory or adult learning principles, and it's funny because making training entertaining actually isn't part of adult learning principles at all, yet it's something that we all seem to strive for. So there's some interesting things out there, and I always come back to the adult learning principles on how adults want to guide their own training and how they want to have their experience recognized and acknowledged. And there's a couple of resources that I use. I use the website Safety Fundamentals, and she always posts like at least one book, one of her activity books for free, like once a quarter or more often. And she's got some really great learning activities that you can use. And it's more so to get the workers together. So you get the workers talking. And my husband is an English teacher for middle school and high school. And he always tells me, don't work harder than your students. And so whenever I feel like I'm straining, like, oh, this class is so difficult, I think of that. And then I try to get the students together. And then it also satisfies adult learning theory that they like to have their experiences acknowledged and recognized, and share their experiences and direct their learning. So, there's lots of really cool tools that we can use, but always, I think it's good if you have people together to use that to your advantage, to get them together. And then the other resource I wanted to share was about the other languages. And so for Spanish There's a company out there called Red Angle Spanish, and he's got some really great resources on, especially for construction related stuff, on translations and just how to do better at your construction site Spanish.
No, that's solid. Good stuff. Excellent stuff, especially to point us back in the direction of the principles. Absolutely. One that I wanted to jump over to here is dive into a little bit of the questions. This is from Monica. It says, I am new to the state profession. I graduated a year ago and I'm learning this career path. What would you tell safety professionals like me starting in this profession to focus on to make safety fun at work and not redundant? Thank you.
Well, I'll start this one because here's one thing that I've learned. Don't talk like a lawyer. That's the first way you can make things fun. That was one of my biggest frustrations in safety when I first got in it is every program, every policy, every letter, every email sounded as if a lawyer had formatted it and sent it rather than a human being. Not saying that lawyers aren't human, they are, but they don't write like humans, they write like robots. So that would be the first thing I'd say is one, write and speak in a normal inflection, normal tone, normal communication style versus sound like a lawyer, and then focus on building relationships. You can't have fun with people that you don't have a relationship with. Think about it. When you go to the pub or you go to the bar, you go with people you have a relationship with. You go and hang out with people that you're going to have fun with because you have a relationship with them. So take the time to build the relationship with your workers so that the safety that you try to push or try to implement in the field, it becomes fun because they know that they can have fun with you because they have a relationship with you and you don't talk like a lawyer.
So is anybody going to plug? Is anyone going to plug Sam's book? I would go with Sam's book. I would say start off by reading Sam's book. It's a really good portion to where to start off at because it has really good content on what to expect inside of this field.
Well, look at that, Sam.
I was avoiding a shameless plug, but
you should probably just read Sam's book, Monica. I mean, that's where you start.
This portion of the show is brought to you by.
I think
Sam did say before we started, everyone has to plug the book. That's why we're allowed on the panel.
Exactly. No. People are going to walk away and think that actually occurred. Now that's going to be terrible.
No, that didn't happen.
I think.
Well, hold on. You know that we are with one of the #1 selling authors right now on Amazon. He's probably going to be too humble to say it, but I will actually say that for him. He is listed as the #1 selling author in Amazon under his category. So he does have some good words there on what's going on.
And I just wanted to say you're welcome, Sam. The way that I pushed your book,
Thank you.
I really feel like I pushed it over that. So Sam, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
I really hope that you're enjoying your success as a #1 selling author.
Well, I mean, let's be realistic too. Inside of the safety space, all you have to do is sell about 35 books to become #1, but that's a whole other story. We can leave it at that.
Yeah,
I want to say that.
I think I heard actually Todd say that. Todd Conklin say that at some point, right? That you only had to sell about 35, and I think similar to him, I think my mom bought about 15.
Right, that's exactly his line. That his mom bought them all.
Yeah. I was going to say, you've only got to sell 35 copies. And on that note, Sam's got 35 copies he's looking to give away for free.
yeah, right. But no, I don't know how I still go back into what we're talking about.
Well, I was actually going to completely wholeheartedly agree with what Jason said. I think the main thing to focus on is building relationships. I think if I think back to, I've been in safety for about 8 years now, and when I started for so long, it was so technical. Everything was focused on technical, and I was walking around. I look back now on some of the training packages that I would deliver, and it's like the first slide, the Health and Safety at Work Act, Section 2, Line 4, subcat, and I'm just like, I'm falling asleep. Do you know what I mean? And that's my own work. So I don't know whether it's any different in America, but in the UK we are forced down that route of compliance in the beginning, and now I'm realizing, this is all about relationships. This is all about them feeling comfortable with me, and building that relationship so they feel comfortable to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with something. But then also I think The important thing is, if you've got those relationships, you get that kind of comfortable communication chain but the conversation shouldn't be around safety. The conversation should be around work. You know, there's so many people in the safety 2 space now are talking about this stuff, but go down there and just say, hey, what are you doing? Get down there and be like, hey, how are you? By the way, have you done that risk assessment? Go down there and be like, hey, do you want a coffee? Let's sit down, have a chat. How's work today? You know, any problems, anything I can change? They're most probably going to turn around and say, yeah, this really dusty safety folder that's under the machine is in the way. I think that's my kind of rant more than advice, but hopefully that will help.
I echo that from when I first started in the field. That was exactly my question, is that I would just say, hey, what are you doing? What's that? And of course, being a woman, asking mostly men these questions, they often wanted to talk about their job incessantly. And so I would just take notes, and sometimes they were saying good stuff, sometimes they were saying some bad stuff. And, you know, I'd try to use that information for good, you know, to pick out if there's different processes or different tools or PPE or just other ways that they could be doing things, because they had and then it was up to me, because then I had access to the budget. So if they're complaining about gloves or glasses, like, hey, I'm the person that can go and bring you a bunch of samples so you can tell us what you want. And that was a way for me to quickly gain that trust of the workers and keep them talking to me. Because why do they want to talk to the safety person? They don't. So
yeah,
you have to try.
I think all of that is so valid, because just to echo a little bit of what everyone said so far, is that when you first start down this path, it's very easy to fall into that piece that Jason was touching on, to kind of write everything in legalese, to kind of fall into this path of, because that's what your organization would mostly like for you to do, right? I'm not gonna, let's not sugarcoat it. Most organizations will almost push you into that corner of you being forced to do that, because when stuff happens maybe not the way we wanted things to happen, that's kind of the first question. Do we have the piece of paper that exempts us from this and covers us for this, and CYA that? Other, and you almost get pushed into this kind of legal corner, right? And the organization's lawyers will help push you into that corner. A lot of other reasons will help, kind of push you into that corner. Don't fall for that, right? As a safety professional, you're in a very interesting position, right? You're kind of in that balancing act, right, between protecting your organization, protecting your employees, right? I don't mean to make it sound so. There shouldn't be a disparity there between those two things, right? Really, what's good for one is what's good for both usually. But some organizations have a much larger gap between those, and you'll discover those as you go through your career, that you'll realize that maybe there's some organizations that need to learn a little bit more than others. But that's a whole nother side rant. The general advice that I would give you would just be to do what these folks are telling you, to focus on relationships, to go out and learn about how work normally happens, right? Don't go out with the procedure in one hand and a stick in the other and try to affect change that way. There's a lot of reasons why we can get into rules and autonomy and all this kind of stuff. This isn't the safety 2 conversation per se, but you have to understand that, again, there's a reason. If you go out there and find that things are not in compliance, there's a reason why they're not, right? People are developing efficiency. People are having to take workarounds. There's reasons why, right? It's not that people are going out there and choosing to just be bad people, right? So go out, build those relationships. Those relationships will help you to learn from normal work. That's the real goal, is to go out in learning mode, not in audit mode, right? Auditing really doesn't do a lot good for us. It's going out and learning. Normal work is where all that kind of magic stuff resides. And just to the point, you don't get to normal work without relationships. Folks are not going to trust you enough to tell you. They're not going to have that conversation to say, hey, you think this is bad? Let me show you where I almost died yesterday, right? And that's the conversations we want to be able to have, right? But that happens through relationships. And that I challenge out to people all the time. It's kind of like my little catchphrase now, but go out for the first half an hour, first hour of your shift. As a new safety person, a good portion of your day should just be going out and learning about the people within the organization.
Let me
go out and learn about their personal lives, learn about what's going on in their world beyond work. Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Sorry, I got a little.
No, I just want to get one little statement out of everybody's vocabulary, especially if you're new to the safety field. And there's a phrase that safety people like to use that says, OSHA says we should. If you could just remove that from your vocabulary as a whole, you'll be a lot more successful starting out.
There's another one I want to throw out there too. Let me throw this one out there because I push back on a lot of folks for this one. In our companies, when not so great stuff comes down through our companies, what's the other one we lean on? Corporate said, right? So that's one to throw out of there too, right? Don't lean in and say, well, those big bad people at, or those big bad people at OSHA, or those big bad.
Well, you can almost start off with a conversation too, where some people actually turn around and they go, "Okay, listen, I don't have a lot of confidence on what's going on. I got put into this position. I might be new to the organization, so they feel more comfortable using the OSHA said and the whole aspect of corporate said." So, what would you guys encourage them to say instead of using those two terminologies?
I think you'd have to reflect on why do you want to say that, and if there's questions that you don't have answered that are making it awkward or difficult for you to go out and give these messages to the workers, that before you go out and you put yourself in front of the workers where you could damage your credibility, you've got to go back to whoever corporate is and find out more for yourself before you're asked to be that messenger. And that's a confidence thing too, because if someone's new, they may not feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I think part of it, so in the UK it's called the HSE, but I think over here we hide behind the HSE a lot of the time because we're not confident. I think confidence is a great point, Abby. But I think to kind of, it's a great challenge actually, I think, from Jay. But I think we can still have the conversation around the guidance that we're getting from our regulators. But what it needs to be, which I think is Jason's point, and if I'm wrong, then please correct me. But it's when we start with that's when it's wrong. When we go over and we say, whoa, stop what you're doing. The HSE or the OSHA says do it like this, and you're not doing it like that. If you start like that, that's wrong. If you go over and you say, hey, how are you doing? Talking about the work, take me through what you're doing. And then when they're explaining to you what they're doing, and then they say, this is how we do it. And I'll say, well, hang on a minute. The guidance says we should do it like that. Why do you think that's not working for you? I think it's not necessarily the phrases, it's a context and how, or maybe the tone or the way we're saying it, or all of the above probably, in how we're kind of saying it. This is what the HSE say. Why doesn't that work for you? And it could be a case that your worker has just stumbled across something that the HSE are not aware of, and you get to feed back, and boom, you're the next big thing in safety. You never know. But we got Prime. I just very luckily interviewed head of safety for the Royal Opera House in London, and she's gone through a crazy kind of court case around noise at work, and they did a lot of work, and the kind of what they found out towards the end was the current legislation and guidance doesn't fit the theatre industry. It doesn't work for the theatre industry. None of it works. You can't imagine going to an orchestra pit and saying, right, you're over the upper limit for hearing protection. All violin and drum players and everything needs to wear hearing protection. And the courts literally said that to them. And they were like, well, hang on a minute, we can't do that. So sometimes the guidance doesn't fit your industry. So you just have to have that conversation. This is what the guidance says. What do you think about that? Does that work for you? It doesn't work for you. Okay, why does it not? And let's try and fix that.
You're actually completely wrong on that, James. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Actually, you nailed it. I appreciate it.
I really like the discussion around kind of the shift in assumption too, right? That's some of what we're talking about, right? Instead of going out and assuming that for us that the standard is right or the procedure is right always, right? We take a big leap there and say, we make it a large assumption that there's only one right way to do things, and that's probably just not true, right? So going out and again, back to learning from instead of going out assuming that, okay, well, they're not in line with the black line, right? So the blue line just must be wrong, right? It's probably not the best approach to take, right? To go out and try to understand why all of that makes sense to not do that, right? There's a reason why all of that makes sense, right? Whether that's even if you're looking at stuff kind of with hindsight backwards, kind of looking at an event after the fact and going, okay, well, all of that still made sense. As looking at this and going, oh, I don't see how they would not have noticed, how they didn't see this, why they didn't do that. For those folks involved, or those folks even in active ongoing work, all of that stuff makes sense. You walk up on someone that's standing on a bucket, right, trying to reach something, really just off the wall kind of generic example, insert generic example here, right? But for whatever reason, that's making sense to that person at the time, or they wouldn't be doing it, right? So I think it's changing our mindset and changing, our approach a little bit by shifting their assumptions, going, okay, that makes sense to that person, as ridiculous as that looks to me right now, or is way out of whack with the standard or our internal rules or procedures that it is currently. Again, insert whatever example here. There's a reason why it's making sense. And my job as a safety professional isn't to go beat and shame that person for breaking the rules or being a wrongdoer in our organization, or sinning against our religious documents, our OSHA documents, right? But my job is to go out and understand why that makes sense, because that's where the magic stuff's going to be anyways. The magical learning sauce is going to be right there into why it made sense. Because if you figure out why it made sense, we can actually work on modifying the behavior then, instead of just going out and asking people to change their behavior.
Sam, I'm going to have to shoot in a minute, unfortunately, but there is a question from Pedro that I would quite like to hear what everyone says about. If you don't mind me kind of taking over your role for a second, sorry.
No, we share this role. You jump in.
But he said about what challenges we've come across when trying to kind of make safety a bit more fun, which I think is a really interesting conversation. But and I'll start off with one of mine. We're in a very serious job. We're trying to do something that's extremely serious. We're trying to stop people dying. So how can you make something so serious fun? And I'm very lucky to have a lot of family that work in some extremely serious industries. One's an armed police officer in what would be a very horrible city in England. That to be an armed police officer in, you're probably at the top of your career in this town. But she does a horrible job. And if you would hear jokes and the way they approach this stuff, it's the pinnacle of like dark humor, because they have to make it fun, because it's so bad that they have to make it fun. But there is a massive fine line, I think, between, when you're, say, if I was delivering, I do a lot of fire safety stuff. So I'm delivering fire safety training. And in one moment, I'm talking about, say, the Bradford Football Stadium fire that we had in England. And the reason we use that even now is because the video of it is so good and so powerful, but it's harrowing. It's horrible to watch. You're literally seeing people burn alive. It's horrible. It's extremely serious. And then 10 minutes later in my training, I'm making jokes around myself. Normally I'm making quite a lot of self-deprecating humor or something like that. But I think there's a balance between, now we're serious. This is serious. Listen to this. And then 5 minutes later, it's, hey, we can relax now. We can have a bit of fun. But I'd be interested to see what other people's challenges were around that.
I'll jump right in. I think one of the biggest challenges to making safety fun is our olds. That's just kind of a term phased by the Safety Justice League, and it's those that are set in their ways in safety. And what happens is you see cannibalization of our own whenever somebody tries to make something different. So when you try to make something fun, those that have been doing it this way and that way forever and years and forever, they don't look at it as a positive of finding a new way to reach new people and keep new workers safe. And because it's not the way that it's always been done. And because it's not the way that it's always been done, therefore it can't be correct. So it has to be eaten alive. Like a cannibal would eat their own. So that's always been my biggest struggle, biggest challenge is other safety professionals. And that's really a sad thing to say, that other people within our profession are the ones that I've had the biggest struggle in making safety fun with. That's been my biggest challenge.
Similar to that olds thing, I was going to say, like, if we're going with word association, what's your biggest challenge? I would say grumpy people. So basically that would be like the olds, people that are like, oh, why is she doing this? This is stupid. How is this going to help me learn? What am I doing here? What's the point? And so I think if we're going to use like games and activities and jokes, that we really need to make sure that we're confident in what we're presenting, because there will be pushback. There will be people that are like, no, I'm not doing this. So you need to have some backup plans, but also, read the room, right? Always have different things in your back pocket when you're, especially like a longer day of training, because, I like that cave people thing. Who just said that? I saw it pop up. Citizens against virtually everything. Yes, those are the people. You're going to have those people that are contrarians, like to everything that you're going to try and do in the training setting. So again, I guess I just go back to confidence, that you're confident in what you're teaching, you're confident in what you're speaking about, and that you're confident in the activities that you're about to facilitate in a training setting. Because it's going to happen.
Sorry about that. Trying to get unmuted there. I'm struggling now. I lost my space bar. But mine's similar. I think you guys are spot on. It's just that, right? That really hits home, Jason, in particular, because no matter, we're kind of talking around safety entertaining, but as we go down the path of doing anything a little differently in the safety space, I went around and trained tons of human organizational performance fundamentals courses, and the vast majority of the folks that go is other safety people, right? It's the people that are going, you're my people, really?
Yep.
You know what I'm telling you.
Haters. Because
right, and it's not even too much of that. And I'll even give I think there's a lot to be said about, I don't like calling it converting people, but giving folks the information and allowing them some time to come to their own conclusions about it, and they'll usually come up with in at least a similar space that most of us will fall into, right? I like the way that our friend Pedro on here that's asked a couple questions, haters to likers, right? to at least, give them the information, give valid information, talk about it, continue to have those conversations. And most folks, even grumpy old safety people, right, will eventually come along at some point. And I don't mean to be ageist in that in any way. I love the term that the Safety Justice League does use around old, and it has nothing to do with age, right? It has everything to do with mindset. But I think it's so interesting because as you go out and I talk about doing things differently with leaders, when I talk about doing things differently with executives, when I talk about doing things differently with foremen and crew supervisors, folks, frontline employees, like, yeah, please, that sounds great, different, cool, it's neat, it's more fun, it's entertaining, as we're going to talk about, it's different, it seems like it might garner us some different results, right? It seems like a lot of the other professions within our organizations and with what we do, they understand that concept, that we can't just keep doing the same things and expect to get a different result. But for some reason, when it comes to our own, it seems like we keep trying to go down this path of doubling down. If we just do the old things we've always done harder, then we'll finally get a different operational outcome. And that's just not true, right? Our systems are tuned to give us the results that we're getting currently, right? If we don't change things on the input side, the output's not going to change, right? We have to start working over here a little bit, i.e. doing things a little differently, right? So I that one hits me like right here, right? That one hits me right here because that's something that I encounter almost daily. Right. And I'm not saying that I think we can all be adults enough to admit that none of us are right about everything. Right. I think dissent is a great thing. I think pushback is a great thing. I think open and honest conversations. Some of those grumpy folks, they just pretend to be grumpy. They've got a good heart. Right. A lot of those folks are actually telling us a lot of really good stuff. But some are just grumpy for the sake of being grumpy. Back to the cave people. I like that. I like that. So I think there's something there to be able to, how we tune ourselves to really listen to the folks that we need to kind of get that input from, maybe tune out the ones that we don't, there's something to be said there. But that has been my biggest challenge as well, is how do we bring other safety folks around? And for me, it's just been through conversations. It's been continuing to have the conversation, continuing to have the dialogue. At some point, I'm one of those folks, as with most probably, that as long as we're having a constructive conversation, I'm all for it, right? As soon as it turns into, I don't like you because of what you said, I shut down, right? And rightfully so, right? So I think there's something to be said about keeping that conversation open, continuing to have that conversation with the dissenting voices, because they're going to give us a lot of good, valuable stuff too. But then again, at some point, maybe saying, okay, that's enough. As long as you're not actively opposed to me, I don't really care. I'm just going to keep moving forward. So there's something to be said there.
I see Brent's comment in the chat, and I think that that's really where a lot of us are coming from, that, we don't really care about the rates. We don't care about the numbers. We're caring about the people. And I think the problem, it's not so much that it's our mindset that's a problem. It's just that our organization and don't necessarily understand that. And so if we're saying, hey, I don't care about zero, I don't care about the rates, people at your organization would be like, what kind of safety person are you? But I think like if we can figure out how to communicate with those executives and like start to move the needle on it so that they understand, like, it's not that I don't care. It's just that if we're focused on certain things like those numbers, that we're not actually going to have real improvement. So I think there needs to be a lot of like reflection. I'm sure a lot of us that are employed, we're just happy to be employed right now. And you kind of have to work with what you have. So I think there's still room for these mindsets at organizations that kind of have like an old, the overall kind of old mindset. It's tough. It's a struggle day to day for a safety professional. I get it. But I think that there's things you can do in modifying your communication and giving them more insight into where your mindset is coming from and start to get them over to your side.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I mean, to me, it's been back to that. It's, again, some of the hardest people to, and I say convert, it's really not convert. But the hardest folks to bring along into safety better, just doing safety a little bit better, are other safety professionals. To the point that we're talking about with the executives, with those folks, I've just found, and this is what I learned with those folks that I translated over to other safety professionals as well, especially in the air quotes olds here, and with those mindsets in particular. If you continue to just sprinkle out the crumbs, right? So take a look at this. Right? Here's a link to a video. And they're gonna cuss you and say, when they send you back some negative comments, send you back some negative feedback. You send them a book, you send them this, you send them the other thing. You send them some videos, you send them the Safety Justice League podcast, right? You send them over to listening to something, and eventually you just continue to try to replace bad ideas, or I won't say bad, not so good ideas with a little bit better of ideas, right? And eventually in that process, you're eventually going to make some headway. You're eventually going to gain a little bit of ground. There's some folks that you're never going to gain ground with. You have to admit that too. We have to say that right out of the gate. There's some folks that are dinosaurs, and as with the dinosaurs, they will go extinct at some point, right? They'll retire out of this profession, or they'll be gone in other ways, unfortunately. But that's the small portion of folks, right? Just be honest, that's a very small portion. I really love the use of the general adoption curve just for any of this stuff, right? You really focus on your kind of middle of the curve, right? You can get a lot of curve. So,
it goes back to the PR thing you're talking about at the very beginning, that the safety messaging and communication, you need to, maybe us as safety professionals, instead of digesting a bunch of safety content, branch out a little bit and learn about marketing and influencing and social media type of stuff, and then apply those principles in your workplace. Not so much always having a safety conversation, but it's more of like you said, the crumbs, like dropping the crumbs or sprinkling things here and there. Like any time that you're talking to a worker, or like face-to-face interactions, awesome. Text, video, phone, don't waste any opportunity. It's not like you're pushing things on them like a bad salesperson, but that you're always just kind of like planting those ideas and putting things out there, because then it adds up. It's like subconscious or subliminal messaging to people about safety, but it's safety, so it's okay. So do it.
Yeah, that repetitive exposure, right? There's some stuff there, right? There's actually some studies around that as well that we won't dive into too much. That's not not to get too nerdy here, but I think this is interesting. I like this. Let me see if I can get it pulled up. 12-step programs for Oldaholics. Oldaholics Anonymous. I'm a recovering OSHA compliance officer. That's from the comments. I like it. I think that's interesting. So maybe that might be something for the Safety Justice League to pursue, a 12-step program for Oldaholics. I think that'd be a very interesting course or something, right? That'd be a pretty cool thing. But I think that's an interesting comment, because it's strange, because I refer to myself a lot of times as a recovering safety professional currently, and I shared on a podcast not too long ago that I don't want to have to say that anymore. Right. I want to get to the point where I don't have to say that I'm an ex-safety professional that's technically still a safety professional, that I'm in recovery. Right. I think there's a lot to be said about working on that stuff. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with what we were just talking about. We were just talking, there's a lot of conversation going on still about incident rates in the chat. Organizations have this really bizarre need to continue to focus on outputs, right? And if we just try to focus harder on outputs, we think that we're going to change the output. Again, it just, when we say it out loud, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But for some reason in our organizations, we continue to double down on measuring harder, thinking that measuring harder will actually cause change.
If people would just zero harder, Sam, if they would just zero harder, then, all the outputs would be zero. Just if goal zero is the goal, just zero harder. That's all we need to do.
There you go. I think that's it.
Hopefully anyone that's just listening can pick up that.
Oh, no, absolutely. That was I apologize if my sarcasm didn't come across clearly. Don't zero harder. Zero is look, when you aim for zero, you get it. You get zero reporting. You get zero honesty. You get zero input from your workers. You get it. So if your goal is zero, you're going to get it. You're just not going to get the zeros you think you're going to get.
There you go. I think that's a good spot to start doing our final roundabout here. I love it. I couldn't say it any better myself. Well, let's start to wrap up. If you guys don't mind, we'll go around kind of for closing comments here. I know James had to scoot. He had some other stuff that was going on. I know so we had a couple people that have had to leave as well. I apologize for a little bit of a late start. We still have kind of a hard stop here though. Again, unfortunately, Zoom has been really giving us some fits lately. I don't know how things are going around the country, but I can tell you in Phoenix, even just gaining internet access right now is getting to be a little bit of a struggle with everything that's going on. So we'll go ahead and start. I've got an official order here somewhere, but Jason looking at me on the screen. He's my big screen right now. So I'll say around, let's get final comments and stuff from Jason Lucas.
Yeah, final comments. Real first, just thank you for letting me be a part of this. This is an awesome initiative to make safety entertaining. I guess just have fun, guys. I mean, that's the thing. We do work in a very serious environment, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun. Build those relationships and have fun.
Totally agree. Like Sam, you were mentioning earlier about bringing yourself, being genuine, authentic. I think if people can figure out a way to bring themselves to the mix, it's going to make communicating about safety or communicating about anything with the workers that much easier if you're doing it from your genuine place of how you talk and how you present in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. To kind of throw my thoughts in there as well is that just treat people like you want to be treated. To me, it's so much of it comes back to this golden rule thing that I can tell you my parents beat it into me. Right? You're going to treat people how you want to be treated, right? There's so much to be said there, right? Treat people with kindness. Treat people how you want to be treated. Again, go out and learn. That's probably the biggest pro tip that I can give anybody is don't go out again with the rules in one hand and a stick or a carrot in the other and expect to affect change. We really, really get where we want to go through learning. That's the only tool. That's really the only thing that we have, right, is learning. Anything that gets in the way of us learning is bad for us, right? Even if that's our need for compliance, it's bad for us if it gets in the way of learning, right? So we need to go out and focus on learning. We get to that learning through all of those relationships that we were just talking about. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be nice to people. Be true to yourself, right? Be genuine, be open, be honest, all that stuff that we were just talking about. To me, that's really how we get to that point that we want to get to, right? That's how we make it entertaining, right? That's if you go to work and you can be yourself and you can be open, you can be honest, and it's fun. That's the definition of making safety entertaining to me, at least. So with my kind of last little ramble there, we'll go to Jay Allen for his thoughts.
Well, I would say, if anything, first off, let me say thank you for allowing me to be a part of the board. What I would say, number one, is challenge the status quo. If anything, challenge the status quo, build the safety program that you want. It might not be the one that the organization's currently looking for, but build the program that you want. As you build it, find that super advocate inside of your company, organization, and so on, and show them some of your ideas. Have some of those discussions with them of those things that you want to do. Now, understand, as we're starting to build this, you're not going to do a full momentum change in a heartbeat. Just not going to happen. You have to show and prove the things that you can do as you move forward. Make the safety program that you want. Remember, all you need to do is convert one person, and that one person can actually affect many others. Thank you for taking a listen to this. I really do appreciate that too, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think that's an amazing point that Jay kind of summed up there with find your bright spots, focus on those bright spots. And that really helps a lot. So that's all we've got. I know we've went a few minutes over. Again, I apologize for the late start. Please send all of that hate mail towards the Zoom Corporation, if you don't mind. I know we've all been having struggles with Zoom at the moment. If there's nothing else, again, you know how to reach all of us. You can get a hold of me through the Hop Nerd podcast, Jason Lucas, Abby Ferry, obviously the Safety Justice League, their website. I think it's the safetyjusticeleague.com. Is that correct? And then the podcast, make sure you check them out. Jay Allen over at Safety FM as well, the Jay Allen Show, all that stuff. I think the Rated R Safety Show probably coming up soon.
Yeah, it'll be coming on right after this.
So you can head over that way if you want to check out the live stream for the Rated R Safety Show. Thanks to all of you that tuned in. Thank you to all of our panelists. I look forward to doing something again like this in the future. I think it has been a blast. I hope that it has brought value to each and every one of you. Again, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear make these things better, and we just love to hear your thoughts on it. So thank you so much. Any way that I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to shoot me a message. I'm sure everyone here feels the same way. Don't hesitate to reach out if we can help you in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
All righty, that's it.
They're coming to get you.
Siren going behind me. Phoenix is on fire. That's all I've got. Thank you all.